I'm a huge fan of slice of life shows. I think it's actually where a lot of the best writing and directing in the anime medium can be found. Anime is sometimes accused, fairly or unfairly, of relying on overly declarative hand-holding dialogue, but that criticism rarely applies here. In slice of life stories, conversations aren't a means to an end. They are the end. They focus on the moments most narratives would skip past. You could dismissively describe them as friendship simulators, and in some ways they can feel closer to Twitch streams than traditional narratives. But is that really a flaw? I think there's something wonderful about an entire genre dedicated to dramatizing mundane existence. David Foster Wallace couldn't crack it with The Pale King, but Naoko Yamada did around the same time. You should have just watched her stuff. Of my favorite of these shows, each excels in their own way. K-On! Is beautifully directed, oddly realistic in its framing and blocking, and has some of the best dynamics between its girls. Nichijou and City strike me as the funniest, excelling basically a sketch comedy. Habane Ramne is the ideal melancholy version of the form, functioning as an epilogue to lives we never get to witness. More recently, I enjoyed Bocchi the Rock as a more anxious, zoomery take on the K-On! Mold, but I felt especially passionate about 2021's Super Cub, an oddly subdued series that has a disposition much like its protagonist. Kind and attentive, but a little sad, a little low-key. Still, even as these shows dominate the top 25 anime list I occasionally tinker with, I have had a hunger for something a little different in the space. Nichijou-kei anime, as they're called in Japan, are very aspirational. They're about the friend groups I wish I had in high school, not the ones I actually did. The summers I yearned for, but that never quite came to pass. That's fine. I'm not one of these people who complains about anime, a medium largely for high schoolers, focusing on high schoolers, but I think in Bocchi the Rock and Super Cub's increasing emphasis on more damaged protagonists, I've been beginning to make out a new kind of Nichijou-kei series, just on the horizon. And with Yani Neko, we have the most extreme version of that new form, tearing its way out of the anime womb with feral claws. This is not an aspirational series. The girls here are not doing okay. They are addicts. They are the "damn bitch, you really live like this" meme given form. So it's dirtbag moe, it's slice of sleaze, it's deadbeat girls doing deadbeat things. Whatever you want to call it, and it is a beautiful thing. Probably the closest stylistic ancestor to Yani Neko is Nia Under 7. You've got the just below the poverty line characters, the slightly alternate universe setting with a different species alongside humanity who experience xenophobia and discrimination, and you have a member of that species who is particularly chaotic and one of our main characters. But this is a much more hoe-scaring version of that idea. There's no mostly gentle human protagonist to ease us in, and the show does its very best to be as abrasive as possible. In the first 3 minutes, we have our main character having explosive diarrhea, and it is as if the thing is saying, "Please, please drop me. I don't deserve to be watched." It's a self-destructive cat girl of a series, is what I'm saying, ready to scratch out your eyes if you look at it wrong. But beneath that veneer, it is also very much in the Nichijou-kei tradition. I love these characters. I love seeing them interact. I love learning about their world. And I appreciate having a version of this story where I can relate to the characters' issues with addiction and trauma. The opening references Trainspotting several times, and I appreciated that because I live in Trainspotting country, despite my weird accent. But to me, Yani Neko is more like a combination of a slice of life series with something in the indie autobio comics tradition. Joe Matt in Peep Show writing with self-reflexive aplomb about his pee jar, or Simon Hanselman's Meg breastfeeding Mog in the welfare office to get the state archons off her back. That kind of vibe. There's a confessional aspect to it, of course, but I don't find these works dark or sad or anything like that. Rather, much like Yani reaching for her cardan, I find it takes the edge off. So yeah, please watch Yani Neko. It is a hell of a show. This video is part of What I've Been Watching, a series that mostly lives on my Patreon. Basically, it's a place to talk about some stuff I've seen, but don't yet have fully formed enough takes on to devote a full video to, but that I'm excited about nonetheless and want to share my passion for, albeit in a slightly fragmented form. So you can't be mad at me if these takes aren't comprehensive, or if they don't make sense, or if they're not good. No one can be mad at me. This season, though, has quite a lot of good stuff. I'm very behind on Goodbye Lara, but I will echo everyone else in saying how nice it is to see big, vibrant, cartoonish styles return to anime. A Witch from Mongolia is still on my watch list, but I'm sure it will be excellent, as basically all Naoko Yamada works are. Of course, if you know the tone of my channel, you'll probably be unsurprised by how much I'm digging The Ghost in the Shell, an adaptation of the 1989 manga, which, unlike previous versions, is actually trying to stay very faithful to that comic, both in art style and narrative. And I've been having such a good time watching this every week. It reminds me of the type of show that got me into anime. Science fiction narratives with complex worlds that also function as workplace dramas filled with messy people. It's a form I think the medium has always excelled in, and while Gits takes place in a cutting-edge future, it's also a kind of throwback, both to the cyberpunk imaginary of the late 80s and to a certain idea of what cool used to look like in these shows. Hard to get much cooler than Motoko Kusanagi, but Bado does give her a run for her money with his bright 80s shirts. It's also given me time to reflect and ruminate on something, that being why I've never been able to fully love the original Ghost in the Shell film. Now, when I say that, I want you to know that I'm not trying to be a hater. Whenever I watch Oshii's 1995 adaptation, I always feel like I am somehow failing the movie. I recognize it as one of anime's most important texts, as something that will probably be remembered far into the future. The imagery in there, whether it be Motoko turning invisible against a hypercity sprawl, or tearing apart her own body while trying to disassemble a tank, is as powerful as any image in 2001: A Space Odyssey or Solaris, whatever other important sci-fi film you want to throw a stick at. Similarly, I think that early shot of Motoko waking up in her apartment is one of the best frames in anime. But it's a screenplay I've never really gelled with, never been able to make an emotional connection to. A big part of that, of course, is the style of dialogue, which is cold and heady, almost alien in its tenor. I do understand what Oshii is employing here. It's monotone, declarative, dense, it's Godardian, it's a little Bergman-esque. It's giving that Brechtian distance that forces us to consider the film's themes and philosophy. And the detached style does make sense narratively, because Motoko's arc is about becoming progressively alienated from her body. If she looks a bit like a mannequin, well, she feels like one too. But alas, the head and the heart do not always agree, and the coldness of the characters has always made it difficult for me to connect with Oshii's vision. It doesn't help that I love the manga, and manga Motoko is just such an embodied figure. She's impatient and competitive and a bit of a flirt. If she has a problem or if she likes you, she'll tell you. I understand that Oshii is communicating her feelings in a more sensory, sensuous way. The mid-film diving sequence, for instance, conveys her desire to escape the limits of her body, her ascent towards the ocean's surface mirroring her eventual ascent into the net. And who am I to criticize a film for showing rather than telling? But still, I can't help it. I am just ride or die for original goofy major. Luckily, the new show is fully committed to that side of the manga. It's as much a workplace comedy as it is a drama, and Motoko is not only stoic and philosophical, she's also grumpy and funny and curmudgeonly. She wants her days off and her VR lesbian polycule orgies, damn it. Love when she casually flips off a Baron Harkonnen-looking military guy, or briefly hijacks a politician's body to make him punch out his own face. Love how much she complains about her job. She's just like me, for real. I understand why someone who loves the Oshii film might find this approach off-putting, but if you're one of these people, consider this. We've now had decades of Ghost in the Shell works trying to build from that movie's blueprint, and lately they've almost all been bad. Even if this version's more frenetic energy and flippant tone isn't to your taste, at least it's attempting something those earlier animated entries could not. But yeah, I think if you look at the sort of fandom spaces for Ghost in the Shell, if you look on the subreddit, for instance, there are a lot of older fans who they're really not happy about this goofier, flippant, more chaotic tone. Not everyone, but that is a contingent of people you're seeing who are like, oh, this is not my Ghost in the Shell, which is ironic, obviously, because This is more in line with the original manga. But, you know, I can see where they're coming from because it is a radical difference. Whereas Oshii's vision really embodies the Japanese concept of ma, of pillow shots, of being allowed to reflect in still spaces, Science Saru Ghost in the Shell is more about getting across an onslaught of visual imagery and noise. The joy is in the chaos, right? There's this moment in the 2008 re-release of the Oshii film, the one where they put the yellow piss and shit filter on it for some reason, which I think is Oshii kind of tipping his hat to this aspect of the manga. Motoko looks out at Tokyo and it briefly resembles electrical nodes, a manifestation of a coming singularity. And the original manga often has this quality, this breathless, chaotic tone to it. It reminds me a bit of Akira, obviously a major influence on Shiro. Neo Tokyo is about to explode.
Neo Tokyo is about to explode.
The psychic energy of Tetsuo is destructive, but also a peak at a new form of existence that can't yet be understood. Shiro essentially trades that psychic ecstasy for a technological one. There's also a lot of Neuromancer, the original cyberpunk novel, in Ghost in the Shell. Gibson's text is similarly interested in the overlapping of virtual and physical worlds, but he's a little more cautious about the idea of transcending into the net. Famously, when protagonist Case is exiled from it, he describes it almost like an opiate addict cut off from his supply, describing a certain relaxed contempt for the flesh. The body was meat. Case fell into the prison of his own flesh. In Gips, meanwhile, the coming singularity is treated, I think, similarly to psychic transcendences in earlier sci-fi anime and manga, like Toward the Terra, Akira, and Gundam. Something unknowable and indescribable, and also frightening, but filled with exciting possibilities. You know, it's vaguely new age in vibe. Anyway, I think it would be reductive to say either Oshii or Science Saru's style are the correct version. What's more interesting is the way they complement each other. The Oshii Ghost in the Shell is beautiful but distant. There's an element of anhedonia to it, like Motoko has already lost identification of meat space long before the film began. The Science Saru adaptation, meanwhile, is more focused on Motoko as this creature straddling the line between synthetic and organic. She is a chaotic creature off the net. I don't think Shiro's vision is perfect either. His politics are incomprehensible to me and sometimes vaguely reactionary. For instance, I have now experienced the opening story in both manga and anime form, and I still have no idea why Motoko gets angry at the child laborer from the Dickensian cyborg factory. There are edges here of what is at times an overly edgelordy spirit common in 80s SF. But the core of it is just infectiously creative and exciting and still grounded in really nice character work. And I want to point out that despite being way more frenetic, it does have its own notes of melancholy as well. I really like how the Fujikomas become this kind of robot Greek chorus. They're tied to humanity, but they don't understand us. That moment in episode 5 where one of them sees a dead Section 9 member and says, if he's broken, they should just fix him up, is very effective. Or that moment later on in the same episode when Makoto notes that she has all this technological power, but only because her existence is being bankrolled by Section 9, and when she dies, her body will be retrieved and retooled like a faulty product. Anyway, yeah, watch The Ghost in the Shell. It is great. Watch the Oshii film as well, despite some of my misgivings. You know, it is obviously a classic. Watch the sequel, Innocence. I didn't talk about that here. I actually love the second Oshii Ghost in the Shell film. I think it's a really touching exploration of grief and kind of loneliness. And I also think the visual style with the weird CG is really cold and ghostly. And yeah, I think that's actually a really cool movie. Watch Chainsmoker Cat. Yeah, okay. I'm out.
Our works in stone, in paint, in print are spared, some of them for a few decades or a millennium or two, but everything must finally fall in war or wear away into the ultimate and universal ash.
Except for that one frame of Motoko getting up in her apartment. That one's gonna stick around.